Good evening, dear listeners. I am your host at Haunted Lullabies, the channel dedicated to bringing you the spookiest tales that will keep you up at night. Here, we delve into the mysterious, the unexplained, the eerie, and the downright terrifying. We take you on a journey through the shadows, exploring chilling accounts that will set your imagination alight. Our stories are not for the faint-hearted. They are for those who like to flirt with fear, and for those who find a strange comfort in the goosebumps that our tales provide. We invite you to immerse yourself in the world of the supernatural, the paranormal, and the downright creepy. Hello, I'm Paul, and I've got an unsettling story to unfold before you, taking you on a journey through a night that has never left my memory. It all began in a remote part of the country, under the cloak of a moonless night, with a drizzle making its presence felt, and the wind singing the chorus of solitude. I found myself on a long, isolated highway, a desolate and near-forgotten patch of asphalt, a journey that was more a road trip rather than any urgent mission. The rain was coming down in relentless sheets, adding an eerie sense of suspense to the already unnerving atmosphere. My car's headlights were fighting to penetrate the darkness, struggling to illuminate the road ahead with feeble glow. I was driving through an area that was sparsely populated, a place where human presence was as rare as the sighting of a shooting star. To say it was isolated would be an understatement. It felt more like driving through the heart of a silent, forgotten world. The fuel gauge was another concern, its needle plummeting towards the dreaded E, the symbol for emptiness. As the monotonous hum of the tires on wet asphalt filled the car, I held my breath, praying to spot some sign of a fuel station. The digital clock on the car's dashboard read almost 1 a.m, a time when most sensible people were tucked up in their beds, lost in dreams. And then, just as the panic was beginning to set in, I spotted a tiny flicker in the distance, a small beacon of hope in the midst of the overwhelming darkness, barely visible through the rain-smeared windshield. A lone gas station, its neon sign flickering intermittently, beckoning me towards it like a lighthouse guiding lost ships in a turbulent sea. The relief that filled me as I pulled into the gas station was immeasurable. The crunch of gravel under tires, the welcoming glare of the overhead lights, it was the most comforting sound and sight I had encountered that night. Yet, as I stepped out of the car, a certain unease began to settle upon me. The atmosphere felt wrong, as though I had inadvertently stumbled upon a scene from a suspense thriller. The gas station was desolate, not another soul in sight. The silence was oppressive. Not even the rustling of leaves or the nocturnal chittering of insects could be heard. I approached the gas pump, feeling a sense of foreboding. The display was broken, the digits unreadable, and the pump seemed ancient, as if it hadn't been used in years. Its rusted exterior was a reminder of a different era, and the paint was chipped and faded. I stood there, in the rain, my hand hovering over the rusted pump, and debated whether to continue or leave. My mind was a battlefield of thoughts, the allure of fuel against the daunting reality of the situation. The rain was pounding on the tin roof of the gas station, the constant rhythm adding to the eerie atmosphere. And then, as I was about to make up my mind, I heard it. A soft voice, like a hushed whisper, cutting through the silence. It seemed to be coming from the shadows near the rundown convenience store. "You shouldn't be here," it whispered, sending a shiver down my spine and chilling me to the very core. In that moment, the desolate gas station became a scene straight out of a horror novel, and I was the unsuspecting protagonist. The voice did not just startle me, it made me question every decision that had led me to that point, standing alone in a desolate gas station, at 1 a.m, in the pouring rain. The chilling events of that night at the gas station still haunt me. The memory, stark and unyielding, is etched into the corners of my mind. It plays back like a movie reel, each frame captured with the precision of a professional cinematographer. The sound, sight, and sensation all too real. Every now and then, when the night is quiet and the world around me is plunged into darkness, the vivid recollection stirs. It was a typical night, much like any other. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow upon the deserted gas station. Cold, metallic pumps stood like sentinels in the dim light. The monotonous hum of the generator echoed in the silence, punctuated by the occasional hoot of a distant owl. I had been driving for hours, the deserted highways stretching out endlessly before me. My body was heavy with fatigue, my eyes drooping with the weight of sleep. It was then that the gas station materialized, a beacon of light amidst the enveloping darkness. Drawn towards it like a moth to a flame, I pulled in, the gravel crunching under the weight of the tires. The interior of the station was no less ominous. A single fluorescent tube flickered erratically, casting long, grotesque shadows against the grimy walls. Shelves lined with faded, dust-covered merchandise stood deserted, while the counter was manned by a disinterested attendant who barely looked up from his worn-out paperback. As I stepped out of the car, a gust of wind swept through the station, rattling everything in its path, raising goosebumps on my skin. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the late autumn chill. Little did I know I was walking into a scene that would forever alter the course of my life. I filled the tank, the pump humming in rhythm with my pounding heart. The night was unnaturally quiet, the silence broken only by the distant howl of a lone wolf. The attendant remained engrossed in his book, oblivious to the tension that hung in the air. I paid and returned to my car, eager to put the eerie gas station behind me. I was about to turn the key in the ignition when a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall and intimidating, the stranger moved with a predatory grace that sent chills down my spine. He approached the car, his face obscured by the hood of his jacket, his intentions unclear. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. Time seemed to slow, every second stretching into hours. I was paralyzed, unable to turn away from the approaching danger. The stranger reached my window, his hand rising to knock on the glass. My heart pounded in my chest like a hammer against an anvil. I didn't know what to do, to stay or to flee. In the end, I chose to face him. The events that followed were a blur. Words were exchanged, threats were made, and a confrontation ensued. The details are hazy now, lost in the fog of fear and adrenaline. But the terror I felt, the dread that gripped me, is as fresh as the day it happened. And now, I can't help but wonder what might have happened if I had made a different choice. Hi, I'm Frank, and I've got an eerie story to share with you today. It all started when I was working the night shift at a remote gas station. This was no ordinary service station. It was a desolate outpost perched on the edge of a forgotten highway, miles away from the nearest hint of civilization. Picture a landscape where the only sounds were the occasional distant howl of a coyote and the persistent hum of the neon sign above the station. It was the kind of place that could make a man feel like the last soul on earth. Night after night, I would find myself alone in that small, dimly lit building, the only source of light for miles around. The hours would stretch on endlessly, filled with the monotony of restocking shelves, cleaning the grimy floors, and counting down the time until dawn. But despite the tedium, there was something about the solitude and the silence that I found strangely comforting. It was as if I had become a part of the night itself, a lone sentinel keeping watch over the sleeping world. But all of that changed one fateful night. The evening had begun as any other, with the sun sinking below the horizon, leaving the world bathed in an inky blackness. The only light came from the gas station's neon sign, casting eerie shadows that danced and writhed on the cracked asphalt. Inside the station, the air was heavy with the smell of gasoline and stale coffee, while the radio crackled with faint music, barely audible above the hum of the refrigerator. As the hours ticked by, a chilling wind began to howl outside, rattling the windows and causing the overhead light to flicker ominously. It was a moonless night, the sky a vast and starless void. It felt as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter the silence. Little did I know the night had a terrifying surprise in store for me, and my sense of comfort and solitude was about to be shattered. On one particular night, a chilling wind was blowing, and the moon was nowhere to be seen. Around midnight, as I was restocking the shelves, I heard the faint jingling of the bell above the entrance, a routine sound, usually signaling the arrival of a late-night customer. But this time, it was different. The jingle was softer, more tentative, as if hesitating to break the silence of the night. I looked up, expecting to see a weary traveler seeking refuge from the chilling cold. but there was no one. The entrance was empty. The desolate highway outside was as quiet as a grave. A shiver ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from a creeping sense of unease. I shrugged it off as the wind playing tricks and returned to my task. Then, just as I was getting comfortable again, I heard whispers. Soft, hushed voices echoing in the stillness. They seemed to come from right behind me. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned around. And there it was. A figure, pale as the moonlight, stood in the dimly lit station. It was disheveled, clothes hanging off its skeletal frame, drenched as if it had just walked out of the sea. But what truly struck fear into my heart were its eyes. They were hollow, devoid of life, staring right into my soul. The figure mumbled something, words too garbled to understand. It was as though it was speaking in a language not of this world. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone to call for help. But before I could even dial a number, an icy gust of wind swept through the station. In an instant, the figure was gone, vanished into thin air, as if it was never there. All that was left was the echo of its haunting whispers and the chilling cold it brought with it. I was alone again, left with nothing but the unsettling silence and a fear that clung to me like a shadow. The figure mumbled incoherently, and before I could react, it vanished into thin air. I was left standing there, frozen in fear and disbelief. Those words still echo in my mind, as vivid as the cold, moonless night itself. The eerie silence that followed the figure's disappearance was deafening, only broken by the occasional gust of wind that seemed to whisper its own chilling tales. As the reality of my encounter sank in, a cold shiver ran down my spine. The once familiar surroundings of the gas station now felt alien and hostile. The flickering fluorescent lights, the deserted highway, the endless darkness beyond. They all seemed to be in on the ghastly secret. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, the persistent whispers still echoing in my ears, the haunting image of the hollow-eyed figure. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking menace, every sound a signal of impending doom. I found myself glancing over my shoulder every few seconds, half expecting the apparition to reappear. The night seemed to stretch on forever, each passing second a test of my sanity. I was caught in a terrifying limbo between the safety of the gas station and the unknown horrors that lay beyond. The rest of my shift passed in an anxious blur. I was a prisoner of my own fear, counting down the minutes till dawn. When the first rays of sunlight finally pierced the darkness, a wave of relief washed over me. But it was a tainted relief, one that knew the night was only a sunset away. In the days that followed, I found myself constantly on edge. The image of the disheveled figure haunted my dreams, turning them into nightmares. Even in the safety of daylight, I could feel its presence, a chilling reminder of that fateful night. That night, the gas station was not just a desolate outpost, but a place of unspeakable horror. The chilling events that unfolded there have changed me in ways I could never have imagined. They've left an indelible mark, a ghostly scar that still sends shivers down my spine. A word of caution to the curious souls out there. There are things that lurk in the shadows of the night, things that defy explanation. Be careful when you venture out into the dark, for you never know what might be waiting for you. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the memory of that night stayed with me. The image of the pale, disheveled figure with hollow eyes was etched deep into my mind, even in the light of day. The whispers I heard that night echoed in my ears during the quietest moments. The faint jingling of the bell above the door would send shivers down my spine, even when it was just the wind. That empty gas station, the desolate highway, the chilling whispers, and the spectral figure have forever scarred my sense of solitude. It's a memory that has turned my dreams into nightmares, a chilling reminder of that cold, moonless night. It's a haunting memory that has forever changed my perception of the night and solitude. The chilling events that unfolded that night at the gas station still haunt my dreams. It's an experience I'll never forget. Hey there, I'm Michael, and I have a chilling story to share. It all began one eerie night when I found myself stranded and seeking refuge at a desolate gas station on the outskirts of town. It was a pitch-black night, and my car was running on fumes, A sigh of relief escaped my lips as I spotted the neon lights of a gas station flickering in the distance. I pulled into the station, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and apprehension. The place was desolate, an island of artificial light in an ocean of darkness. There was an eerie stillness that hung in the air, the quiet so profound that it seemed to swallow the hum of my idling engine. The station stood like a forgotten relic, its rusted signs and peeling paint a testament to its age. The neon lights, struggling to hold on to their glow, cast an uncanny shadow over the place, giving it an ethereal, otherworldly feel. An old-fashioned pump station stood in the middle, its metallic body gleaming dully under the flickering lights. The convenience store adjacent to it was shrouded in darkness, its windows reflecting the ghostly neon lights. The silence was unnerving, as if the world had paused, holding its breath. The only sound was the soft hum of my car and the faint rustle of wind. There were no other customers, no attendant in sight. A sense of isolation washed over me, a prickly feeling of being watched, of being the only living soul in an otherwise lifeless place. As I stepped out of my car, the gravel crunched under my feet, the sound echoing in the stillness. The air was cold and crisp, carrying a hint of dampness, a premonition of an impending storm. I walked up to the pump, the eerie silence wrapping around me like a shroud. The smell of gasoline filled the air, a harsh contrast to the otherwise untouched nature that surrounded the station. As I started to fill up my tank, a chill ran down my spine. The silence was deafening, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that I wasn't alone. The gas station, a beacon of hope minutes ago, now felt like a trap, a stage set for an uncanny play with me as the unwitting protagonist. The events that were about to unfold would forever change my perception of such desolate places. I was halfway through refueling when I heard it, a soft, distant laughter echoing through the stillness. I blinked, startled, and glanced around the deserted station. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the rhythmic drip of the petrol nozzle. The laughter continued, an ethereal sound lingering on the edges of my consciousness. It was like a ghostly whisper, a sound that should not exist in the desolate, lonely night. It was not a hearty laugh, nor a joyful one. It was an eerie, hollow laugh, the kind that sends chills down your spine and makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. The unsettling sound seemed to reverberate, bouncing off the rusted metal and concrete around me, and for a split second I felt an icy shiver of fear creep up my spine. Confusion set in. A gas station, in the middle of nowhere, with no one around, and yet... laughter? I turned off the pump, the sudden silence amplifying the bizarre sound. My eyes darted about, scanning the shadows for signs of life, but there was nothing. Just the flickering neon lights of the gas station, casting long spectral shadows that danced in the cool night breeze. A creeping sense of dread began to gnaw at me. I was alone, or at least I should have been. The laughter persisted, growing louder, closer. It was as if the sound was creeping towards me, inching through the night like a predator stalking its prey. My heart pounded in my chest, a thunderous drum echoing in the quiet night. I was being watched. I could feel it. A prickling sensation on the back of my neck, a cold shiver running down my spine. The laughter echoed once more, a haunting melody that seemed to fill the night. And then I saw him, a figure standing under the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. His presence was like a cold, dark shadow, his gaze fixed on me. And in that moment, I felt a chill of terror that I will never forget. Under the dim light, the figure was pale and gaunt, his eyes fixed on me with an unsettling gaze. His face, as far as I could tell, was as devoid of color as the moon hanging overhead. His skin seemed to absorb the meager light around him, giving him a spectral quality. His eyes, however, were another story. They were alive, vibrant, and horribly terrifying. They held an intensity that made my blood run cold, a chilling stare that seemed to see right through me, into my very soul. The figure didn't move, nor did he speak, yet his presence was as palpable as the chill in the night air. His gaze never wavered, maintaining its fixed stare that sent shivers racing down my spine. I was rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the distant, ghostly laughter that had first alerted me to his presence. The fuel pump clicked, signaling that my tank was full. But the simple task of replacing the nozzle seemed monumental. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to run, to escape, but my body refused to obey. It was as if I was caught in a nightmare, unable to wake up. Gathering every ounce of courage I had left, I managed to replace the nozzle, my hand shaking uncontrollably. I could feel his gaze on me, a tangible force that seemed to bore into my back. I dared not turn around, dared not meet those piercing eyes again. Summoning the last of my strength, I bolted for my car, the keys jingling wildly in my trembling hands. I could hear my own ragged breaths, the sound echoing in my ears as I fumbled to start the engine. His gaze followed me as I jumped into my car and sped off, leaving the gas station and the ghastly figure behind. I drove the rest of the way home in a state of shock, the image of the ghastly figure ingrained in my mind. The eerie silence of the gas station was replaced by the deafening roar of my own thoughts, each one echoing the same chilling question. Who was he, and what did he want? As the city lights replaced the desolate darkness, a sense of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The haunting memory of the figure under the flickering light refused to fade. Even now, the mere thought of that night sends a shiver down my spine. The flickering neon lights, the soft, distant laughter, the pale, gaunt man under the dim glow of the streetlight. They all linger in my mind, a chilling tableau of that terrifying encounter. The events of that night remain etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of the time I found myself stranded at a desolate gas station in the dead of night. Thank you all for tuning into Haunted Lullabies. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time, sweet nightmares.